Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my neighbor claimed my vineyard is demonic and ended up trying to burn it down. He caused over $500,000 in damages and I ended up suing him. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the video. So I own a vineyard and it has been made clear from day one that my neighbor is hugely against it. I'm gonna call him Karen for this story, even though he does not actually look like a Karen from any stereotype. Plus he is a man, but whatever, I'm naming him Karen because that's not even close to the most unhinged thing in this story. Before I can get into what he did, I need to explain a little about my neighbor and our relationship with each other being neighbors for so many years. He is a devout religious Muslim man, and as part of his religion, he refrains from alcohol. I am not an expert in that religion by any means, so I could be wrong in my understanding. I have met other Muslims though, and while they don't drink, they don't seem to have any issues with other people not part of their faith drinking. They just don't partake themselves. Now, Karen is a little bit different from what I'm used to experiencing because he considers the wine I produce demonic. Because of his divide and his other Karen attitudes, we don't get along with each other in the slightest. I would prefer it if I had just never had to speak or interact with him, but that's never really practical when it comes to people that live so close to you. It does not help that he also wants to constantly try to have conversations with me in order to make things the way he wants. In fact, I can give you an example of how a conversation was between the two of us recently. Karen, I want to speak to you. Me, I'm a little busy right now. I always try to just get out of the situation. Karen, it will be quick. I have a much better idea of what you can do for your property. Me, my property and business are fine how it is. Karen, if you just switch to growing other fruits and vegetables, then you wouldn't have to engage in sinful activity. You can be forgiven and stop making that horrible stuff in our neighborhood. I tend to ignore him and walk away because nothing I say is gonna make him accept that I make wine for a living and I have no issues with that. The few times I've tried to push things, he claims I'm attacking his religion by making the wine and that he can get me arrested for a hate crime. I don't even know how that makes sense. When I told him that I didn't care about religion at all, I swear he always had a heart attack. To me, it doesn't matter what you believe or want to do, just let me live my own life and do my job. He must have gotten it through his head eventually that I was not gonna stop my business practices because he didn't believe in it. Sorry, that's not how the world works, Karen. There are other people aside from you that do things you might not like. The solution is to just ignore it and move on. For him, that clearly was not in his range of emotions or actions because what he did next was so dangerous, it could have honestly gotten us all killed. He came to the genius conclusion that if I had nothing growing in the vineyard, then there was nothing immoral and horrible I could do. He figured that starting a fire to burn down my entire vineyard would be a magnificent idea and he would not end up getting caught or in any kind of trouble. When the truth was, if I didn't wake up and see the fire, there was a chance it would have spread to my house and killed me along with everything else. Who knows, it could have spread to his house too. What happened was that I woke up and saw the fire and managed to call for help before it got too far and caused too much damage. That was not to say that it didn't cause damage because about half of my grapes were destroyed and others were just ruined and couldn't be used for anything. He was smug beyond belief about the entire thing, but I didn't actually get that angry at him because I knew what my next move was. Being in my kind of business, there's a lot of money in it, which means I knew that with the amount he destroyed, I could sue him for everything he had. I pressed charges against him for arson and intentional destruction of property. They even got attempted murder tacked on as a charge because it could have spread and killed me, and he did not seem to have any regard for that. They had enough suspicion to get a warrant for his property based on him being up and out of his house at the odd hour the night of the fire. They found what he used to start it and he was gonna end up in jail until the court could decide if he was guilty and a punishment for him. He pled guilty on the charges and flat out admitted that he started the fire, also claiming up and down that he did not want to hurt me and made sure the fire started far away from my house. That all he wanted to do was destroy the grapes because what I was doing was wrong and he wanted to stop me from committing demonic activities. It was clear that he was a nutjob, but not enough to plead insanity or something like that. Nope, instead he was going to prison for the arson and attempted murder. He might not have been planning for me to die, but the actions showed that he didn't have regard for my life or even care. Things did not end there because I was also suing him for the money I lost due to the fire. The cost of the crops, the land that was not gonna be usable for the rest of the season, and what I lost from would have been my wine sales from what was lost. He did not have a chance in that arbitration and needed to give me $500,000 in damages and lost money. For a guy that cannot drink due to his religion, he just spent more money than he had on alcohol. He did not have that much cash because most people just don't. He did have assets though, namely his house and property. The sale from that would give me all the money and that would be the last I had to deal with him. Even when he gets out of prison, he won't be my neighbor anymore. I wish that he would have just been able to calm down and accept that I did this for my living. But instead he had to go full Karen and feel so entitled to the point that I had to follow laws from a religion I didn't belong to. And well, now he is in prison where I can promise him that random people are not gonna change how they do things because of what he wants. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Creepy neighbor installed cameras to spy on me. I put up 15-foot tall spite trees. Well, I think I found a worse type of neighbor than the typical Karen. The award would go to my neighbor, who I have dubbed Creepy. I know it is not creative, but I have a kid that loves Snow White and Creepy kind of fits into that. Unlike a lot of bad neighbors, this guy does not go onto my property and actually does not even speak to me. For an introvert, it really seemed like a dream come true until I found out more about what he was doing. Where I live, we really don't do the typical fencing, even though there is nothing stopping us. Some people have a fence for their dog, but due to the cost and us just not needing it, we don't bother. All the neighbors seem to know where their property stops and another begins, so at least that did not become a problem at any point since moving here. Now, for the neighbor being a creep, I only really found out about it because I decided to join and look at this blog thing that the neighborhood has. Anybody can post things like raising concerns or that we should be on the lookout for a lost pet. Of course, this draws in a lot of people complaining about things. I don't mind and just scroll away if I see something I don't like showing up on the screen. Besides, it seems to be the same people every single time and they mostly get ignored. Anyway, back to the point, I see that the neighbor has been posting on the blog a lot. He gives updates on his house, like how he is in the process of building a sun deck for him to lounge on now that the weather is getting nicer. The more I scroll, the more horrible things that I see on this page from him. Mostly pictures and complaints that he is making about someone in the neighborhood. My face is never visible, but I can tell that these are pictures of me. I was already angry because he had no right to take pictures of me without asking and even then putting them up online. I did not even know how he got these because for the most part I was in the back or side of my yard minding my own business. Things like showing me watering my garden and posting about me wasting water, to even me bending down to plant, and I had a plumber's crack that he managed to get on camera and make a crazy post about protecting the children. I did not even want to imagine what other pictures he could have gotten of me as I kept scrolling. The one I was most concerned about was a picture of me changing in front of the window and him taking my picture. Only my back was visible, but since he could get a picture like that, I was scared to think what he might have taken and kept for himself. I had to figure out how he was getting these photos and make it stop. I was tempted to go to the police, but there was no clear evidence the pictures online were of me. I was sure he had more, but without evidence there was no way they were going to get a warrant. Growing up with my dad on the force taught me a few things that were actually useful sometimes. The only thing I could do was make sure he could not take pictures of me any longer. The first step to doing that was finding out where the camera was on his property. I did some fake yard work in order to face his house and try to see if I could find anything. Finally, right on the wall near his new sun deck, I could see a small camera. He was using a spy camera that was clearly meant to protect your home as a device to look right into my property. He could see my yard, my bedroom, and even a little bit into my daughter's bedroom. He came out at one point and I did not want to let on that I knew about the camera or that I saw his posts online. Instead, I just stood there as he did his usual small talk, which I just then realized was also a little bit creepy. The fact that he would tell me I looked nice multiple times whenever he saw me was now making me very uncomfortable. For the second part of my revenge, I decided that I was going to build somewhat of a fence between his property and mine. I always hated the way wood fencing looked, so I was right away trying to find some nice alternatives that would block him out and not be an eyesore. That was when I found some research about using trees as a type of natural fence. Even though they had to be spread out, the branches and leaves would give almost total coverage. I was just going to make a slight change to what they did, since I saw many people planting mini trees that were only about 6 feet tall. That was not going to cut it for me. I paid to have a bunch of 15-foot tall trees planted on the side of my yard between me and my neighbor. They only started at about 10 and took a little while to fully grow and bloom into what they are today. The wait was worth it though, because there was no way he could see me with a spy camera anymore. The reason I know this is because a blog post showed his camera shot of the trees and a very long paragraph of complaining. I will just tell you the gist of it to save a bit of time, since the trees were so tall they were now totally blocking the sun. That meant the sun deck that he built was now totally useless and constantly covered in the shade of my trees. As usual on the blog, nobody cared about the person complaining, and his rant went on deaf ears. I could see from his pictures that he had no way to see into my house or my property anymore, and he was probably just angry about that. I still have no idea what kind of photos he might have that did not end up online, but I am more relieved that I know he won't be getting any more of those. After the trees went up, I could tell from his posts he actually had a second camera facing my house that I did not know about. That also got blocked from the trees, which made me very happy, because building a fence of trees is not a cheap thing to do. In the end, Creepy lost both the ability to spy on me and use of his sun deck. I am still going to be very cautious of him and not delay to call the police if I actually catch him doing something he shouldn't. I can go into my yard and do what I want without worrying about the creepy guy living next door trying to find pictures of me to put on the internet. He messed with me and learned that I'm not someone to roll over and let it happen. I am going to bite back and bite hard. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would say that's a pretty good conclusion to this overall situation. However, I would argue that the issue at hand, which is the creepy neighbor, still exists, and the situation in that regard is not solved yet. The problem is, I would assume that OP cannot just get a restraining order against the neighbor, because I guess in the eyes of the law, nothing real has happened yet. That is also one of the things I don't really like. In some countries, something first has to happen before you can take action. That does not really make that much sense to me sometimes. And the next one is titled, Awful Neighbor Blocked My Driveway. Although I can swerve around her partial blockage, I got tired of having to do it for the past 6 weeks. And by the way, Ripe Stars, by blockage, OP refers to the neighbor parking in her driveway. I blocked her car's forward path with my trash bin today, collection day, except I smeared some fresh and moist shower drain waste, courtesy of the drain snake/auger that I used this morning to unclog ours, on the bin's handles. I spread it extra thick and even, this way it is camouflaged nicely by the black plastic. She has no choice but to move the bin as another member of her household parks extra close and directly behind her car. I sat on my living room recliner facing the window and sipping coffee to see her disgusted reaction upon touching the slimy and gooey waste matter. I actually caught a glimpse of her gagging and nearly throwing up. I could not contain my giggling as I hosed the bin down like I always do after collection. Petty success. And by the way, Ripe Stars, I'm curious, have any of your neighbors ever blocked your driveway, if you have one? Let us know what happened. And by the way, while you're at it, I would also appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because we are getting closer and closer to 70,000 subscribers. Thank you so much in advance. The next one is titled, Don't Park in the Handicap Parking Spot. Yesterday I met yet another Karen in the wild, and it did not end well for her. At 57 I have met a few and I never hold back. So, info about me, I have stage 4 cancer that is incurable. I have done many chemo treatments that have ravaged my body and mind. My time is coming to an end, and to be honest, I just don't care anymore. I asked my doctor for a handicapped parking pass due to some days I feel really weak and have issues walking far. Our social worker at the cancer center got me one that very day. I guess they can give them out. Anyway, the very first time I used it, I was at the grocery store getting some food. I parked in the handicapped spot and started walking, and this 40-something woman asked me why I parked there. I said that I have a permit and that's all you need to know, and walked away. She said, "I demand to know how someone that's healthy can just do that." I said I am not and just went inside. She marched up to me and said, "I called the cops. You're getting a ticket. You are lazy and disgusting." I looked at her and asked her if she was going to waddle back to the herd and start grazing, or was she ready for the slaughterhouse. The look on her face was pure shock. I said, well, when heavers are at her age, they are either turned out to pasture or are shipped off for processing. One employee I knew came over and told her to leave me alone, that I had cancer and that they called the manager over. She was escorted out of the store and told not to come back ever. And yes, the cops came and they talked to me. I explained everything and they said they were sorry. I said no biggie and went and got my stuff. I hate Karens. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I'm really curious what's up with people who are accusing others of not being disabled. I mean, sure, if that particular person is driving something like a Ferrari or a super sports car and then parking in the disabled spot, I would maybe understand. However, this is a totally different situation and it is just embarrassing. And the next one is titled Revenge on My Neighbors. Our neighbors had very loud parties frequently that would go until 3 AM or 4 AM even on weeknights. When I walked by his house to check my mail, he would mutter insults to himself about me and my kids. I tried to talk to him through his adult son because my Spanish is not that great and his English was no better. I did not feel good about calling the cops on him because he is a minority and his English is poor. Nothing worked. Other neighbors did call the cops on him and his family and it did not work anyway. Finally, I had completely had it and ordered this stuff called liquid butt. A couple of squirts were supposed to be effective, but I did not know how well it would really work from the other side of our shared wooden fence. The next party was on a Tuesday night and it was around midnight. There was super loud music and tons of people dancing and drinking as usual. I went outside and poured the entire 4-ounce bottle on my side of the fence along the fence line and then quickly ran back inside. Within 20 minutes the music was off and the guests were chattering, trying to figure out what was wrong. The guests left to my delight and everyone in my house finally got some sleep. The following day there was a huge sewage repair company truck outside their house most of the day. A month later a for sale sign appeared for one day and it was sold to a very quiet lady who said, "I hope my wind chimes are not too loud for you." I don't miss them at all. Edit, some have asked how the smell would bother my neighbor and not me. After I used it, I went directly inside. I have air conditioning, so none of the windows were open. There was a large group outside in their backyard adjacent to mine, which was directly affected. By the next day, I did not smell anything but rarely go in my backyard anyway. On the label it says it lasts 3 hours, but it could have been longer because I used the entire bottle. And the next one is titled Entitled Jerk Gets What He Deserves. I saw a similar post and it reminded me of this. About a year ago my mom and I were coming home from a long road trip and we were about a city away from our house, so about 2 hours. We were hungry so we stopped at a Wendy's drive-thru. While we were waiting in this huge line, this guy comes speeding into the parking lot, which is basically empty, and parks in a handicap space where there are at least 20 other non-handicap spaces. We look at his license plate and it is not new, and there's not a sticker on there. We look through his windows from our car and there is no tag hanging from his rear view mirror. Then this 20-something guy gets out with a car full of other 20-something guys, none of which seem to be having any trouble walking, and start heading for the inside. My mom rolls down her window and shouted, "Hey, those spaces are for people who, you know, are handicapped." And the driver turns back, flips her the bird and keeps walking. Well, my mom was not having any of this, so she has me call parking enforcement and has me take a picture of this car. parking enforcement comes and instead of giving him a ticket, the officer had him towed. Well, this 20-something driver comes running out swearing on his mother that his best friend is handicapped and that he just forgot the tag. Then one of the guys who had no trouble walking earlier comes out very dramatically limping. Well, the parking officer looks into their records and surprise, surprise, none of them are handicapped or even related to anyone handicapped. They both got tickets as well as the main dude getting his car towed. My mom and I were sitting in our car eating our food, watching this whole thing go down, thinking it was hilarious and the karma was epic. Just a friendly reminder, don't park in handicapped spaces if you are not handicapped. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.